Kreskin, and you don't have to be a mind reader to know the Amazing Kreskin, but this is the second of a series, two shows that I've been doing. I look forward for a long, long time with a man that I revere, and that gentleman, one of the greatest talents in broadcasting, Bill Boggs. And this show, Bill, welcome back. We could have talked, that last 18 minutes could have gone for, I swear to God, 2 hours. I have more things coming into my head, but I want to tell you something. I read, as I said to you, 4 books a night when I'm home. I built a library of for my 8,000 books library. But this book you just wrote this year, it's called The Adventures of Spike. And Spike, as you can see, is the wonder dog. But you have to understand that Spike told the story to Bill Boggs. And when I thought about this, Bill, I thought, well, that's an interesting challenge and so forth. I have to tell you this, and God is my judge. I became so deeply immersed in this book that with the humor, because obviously you wrote humor, you worked with comedians in the past, but the humor you interspersed as Spike talked to his owner, who was Bud, right? Bud was the owner.
Yeah, the talk show host, Bud.
The talk show host, and then got involved in television with his own show, and then became a matinee idol as a character. You immersed in that responses and reflections that Spike said about various famous people in showbiz. I said, oh, I was chuckling out loud because you said things that I thought, well, there was one show where they were talking about doing something in Las Vegas about deceased famous people and dead celebrities. And I have to remember the remark because it was funny. You said they decided that the best person to host that show would have been a gentleman by the name of, was it Larry King? Because he looked dead. It's like,
right. Yeah, that's even in the.
He would have gotten a kick out of that. Larry would have laughed. I know him.
Oh yeah, I know Larry. From the Friars Club. Well, the thing is, the Vegas chapter of the book, one of the things that happens out there is, and the book is a satire. It's designed.
It's a wonderful satire.
And so I took, what kind of a show would be a hit in Vegas? Actual celebrity holograms who will just talk to you. There's a Ronald Reagan one, except he's programmed the last early phase of Alzheimer's. Thinks that Nancy Reagan next to him is Margaret Thatcher. And then there's Rat Pack. And the host of this thing is a celebrity holograms show opening night. Larry King, correct, because he's alive, but he's the one who looks the most dead.
You made me, and some of these people that I've known, I knew Regis extremely well because they did over 100 shows with him. We became very close, and he gives a warning about how you can be overlooked in the future when they find a replacement and people brush past you, almost knocking you over to get to the. And this
next guy.
This is the way people talk that know each other, and it was refreshing. It was such a unique experience that I got a kick out of it because, and then I got to be careful about this because I don't want to get in trouble with my church or what have you. But I love the thing about the Bible belt, and here's Mike at one point is walking around with the Bible in his mouth because he's just grabbed it.
No, you won't get in trouble with your church if you like to laugh. I mean, laughter. You and I have known countless comedians, and you've worked with comedians of all kinds, as I have. Comedians, you have to push the boundaries a little bit. Comedy, as Joey Adams said to me, is really gentle. So I think what I did in the book was, as a writer, as an artist, try to push the boundaries and make fun of things. We should be able to laugh at ourselves in America. Now, there's nothing to laugh at about going on the streets right now. It's a dreadful situation, and hopefully the protests are going to lead to a much more fair treatment of minorities in our country.
Well, let me tell you what worries me tremendously, Bill, and I wrote about this in one of my books about 8 or 10 years ago. My greatest fear, one of the greatest signs of trouble in a society, in the future of that society, is if we lose our sense of humor. I remember as a kid, a little kid in the Second World War, I can remember seeing Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and we didn't have television. We went to the movie theaters and saw the newsreels and the cartoons on Saturdays, and you could tell he was laughing because Bob Hope was mocking everything in sight. So was Milton Berle and everything else. Today, and I know a number of comedians who are not comfortable anymore because they say, Kreskin, they're not going to. I will not mention names, you know them immediately, but some very famous comedians will not work universities anymore. The reason is some of the major universities now insist on an exact script of the comedian's appearance. And I've never heard of that, yes. And I can tell you,
the reason is they're afraid that the students will become, they're kowtowing to the students. They're afraid that something's going to happen that will essentially offend the students. I know my friend, Mr. Cotter, what's his first? Tom Cotter, comedian, says, when I'm on a stage, I know there may be one person out there, and I'll say something that might offend that one person, and they'll vilify me on social media. So here's what I did. Again, this is the book, and I want to show you something. I have a quote in here that says, and this is right in there, it says, never lose your sense of humor. It's the most valuable possession you have.
You know,
it's from my high school yearbook that a classmate wrote in. I have remembered it all my life. I'm going back to what you said. We can't lose our sense of humor. So just to finish on that.
That's one of the greatest weapons in the Second World War. That was one of the greatest weapons. Bob Hope appeared before military groups all over the world, joking and kidding. If we lose that, we're losing a very important aspect of our lives. And it worries me that people are self-conscious now, can't joke about something, that there's got to always be a negative quality in it.
Me too. Well, look, to that end, I want you to know, and I'm glad you read my book and you liked the book. This book is a defense of that. Sure. I put specifically on the cover, warning, just politically incorrect humor. I'm not talking Republican Democrat humor. I'm talking about exactly what we're saying, that some people might think a joke about a woman with large breasts, politically incorrect, you're offending me. Or,
oh my God.
You know, I am standing up for saying we gotta laugh at each other. Things are way too serious in the rest of society for us to be lamenting that somebody make a joke about this person or that person, period. So that's what, at this stage of my life, I'm willing to do that.
One of the most moving entries in your book is a remark made by a woman who I am told brought in more money than almost any female actress in the history of movies, and her name was Doris Day.
Yeah, Doris.
At a part of her life when they found out her husband had stolen all her money, she was now broke, she had nothing.
Yeah.
People tell me, and you hint at in the book, that she still had found great happiness because, as you quote her in the book, she pointed out, no matter what happens in life, if you can have a passion and a closeness to an animal, a pet, it can just expand your life. I have 4 cats. If I didn't travel, I'd have 8 dogs and what have you. One thing about animals, they don't betray people.
No, that's true. Well, I'll read you the quote. I'll read you the quote with Doris Day.
It's a beautiful quote. It's a moving quote.
Understand that there were 3 things you need to know about The Adventures of Spike the Wonder Dog. 1, it's a satire and it's funny.
And it's funny. It is funny.
It's about this kind of dog. It's about an English Bull Terrier. This happens to be a Spike the Wonder Dog bank. The first person to buy 1,000 copies gets one of these for free.
Oh, I'll tell my road manager that. I'll tell him that. Nothing's gonna.
You have to like to laugh, and you have to like comedic books, and you have to like reading, and you have to. We don't necessarily have to. If you like dogs and dog stories, that's what this is. And it's also a love story between the dog, who becomes a big TV star, and his master, who's a big TV star. But getting back to what you said about Doris Day. Doris Day says here, quote, I have found that when you are deeply troubled, there are things you can get from a silent, devoted companionship of your pets that you can get from no other source. I have never found in a human being loyalty comparable to that of a pet. And
that was meaningfully
an element of this, the loyalty that both Spike has toward his master, and Bud, the master, has toward Spike.
I have to ask you something, and I want you to tell me how this came about, because it's clear you wrote this book before the
Pandemic.
Pandemic and so forth, and yet you mention a scene in the book about worrying about New Year's Eve because there could be riots, there could be people with guns, there could be antagonism. How did you put that in the book, Bill?
Oh, well, what you're talking, when Bud and Spike first leave North Carolina, they get to New York. The second night in New York,
Yes,
second night in New York is New Year's Eve. And I still live in New York, Manhattan, and I have seen New Year's Eve go from in 1975, you could stroll around town, walk down, go to the Rainbow Room, to the Times Square area, necessarily, particularly after September 11th, 2001, being walled off and so forth. People can't, you go in, you can't get out for 5 hours. So I thought it would be interesting to send up a parody of that. And so it's New Year's Eve, but what I have for 2 days, Spike is watching TV of all the theoretical things that could happen on New Year's Eve, and how television pumps us up to be afraid.
Because you mentioned the Taliban, you mentioned ISIS, you mentioned in the book.
Yeah, that was written like 2.5 years ago. ISIS.
That's remarkable. The irony of it, the synchronicity of it.
Yeah, you have to read the stuff, but some of the things that, you know how television, like, I remember when I was working at WNBC Channel 4, and I was anchor Weekend Today in New York, a storm was coming, like a hurricane was coming up the coast, and I'm in there for 2 hours with, Al Roker and McGee Hickey and all these people. And for 2 hours, we're telling people, whatever you do, don't go out of the house today. It's dangerous. Be careful, for God's sake. I finish the show. It's 10 o'clock in the morning. I get ready to, I got an umbrella, go down the subway. I thought, well, I'll look at, see how bad it is. Nothing. It wasn't even raining. I walked home. So there is that sense of TV, like getting our nerves really rattled.
I'll tell you something, Bill, and I can't believe these 15, 18 so minutes have gone by. I mean this sincerely when I tell you folks, you've got to pick up this book. This is a very moving one. The part of the book where this beautiful dog is kidnapped and looks like no future, as a tearjerker. This has got to be made into a movie. I do predict things under certain circumstances, but we're going to talk to each other again. Bill, this has been a joy talking to you, and we'll see each other real soon, be the good Lord willing.
Kreskin, I thank you very much. You can get the book anywhere books are available, Amazon, Barnes & Noble. I want to say this, Kreskin, we met in 1967. Even you could not have predicted that in this year on this state, here we would be talking to each other over a computer. God bless you, Kreskin. You're a very special, wonderful human being, and have been an important part of my life for as long as I've been in show business. I'm honored to be on your show. Thank you very much.
And in the spirit of broadcasting, I will not say goodbye, Bill. Let's just say to be continued.
Thank you.